Many thanks for joining us, dear viewers. This is Future Africa program. I'm welcome on the mobile hosting this program. Have a beautiful time with us. Today, I have one guest from Zoom meeting from the United States of America. My guest today is Eugene Talford, a Pan-Africanist. Many thanks for joining me and welcome to this program.
Thank you, Okaba.
Okay, just to begin with, who is Eugene Talford? Please introduce yourself for audiences.
Sure. My name is Eugene Talford. I am the president and CEO of two companies. One of the companies is ETC Logistics. We are a freight management company. We basically provide shipping services from the United States to Afro nations, which consist of the Caribbean, Central and South America, and also Africa. I also own and operate a oil palm plantation in Guyana, South America. And I'm also a political activist. I am with a group here in the United States known as the New Africa Network, which is a group, political economic group striving to provide information and bridging the gap between brothers and sisters here in the United States with brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa to do business, as well as helping to solve some of our political and economic problems.
As one Pan-Africanist, how are you following the current situation in Ethiopia? What is your understanding about this situation?
Well, I'm very aware of what's happening right now in Ethiopia, and peace and blessings are extended out to our brothers and sisters there in Ethiopia. The current situation in Ethiopia, we have been following over the last 6 months with the rise in the civil disturbance that has been taking place in the Tigray region. And is also in the Omoros region of Ethiopia. But we're hoping that our brothers and sisters there can come to a resolution to unify, and especially what's happening right now within the African diaspora. There are many atrocities that are being carried out by the Europeans. And so we're hoping to unify our brothers and sisters on the continent so that we may unite together as one.
What would be the role of Pan-Africanism in time of crisis in one African country?
Being able to understand and share that although we are a large group of Black people, we come from different backgrounds and cultures, but just based on some of the things that we've been experiencing from colonialism, as well as imperialism from the Europeans and the Arabs. I think it is now that it is a time in our lifetime, being that we are a new breed leader, African generation, to be able to forge out our alliances, as well as looking at solving some of our own solutions without having the Europeans and the Arabs or the Asians involved. A lot of the disturbance that take place in many African nations, including here in the United States, with the divide between Africans, even here in the United States, have drawn that to our attention. And of course, being a political activist, I see that the unification of our people is a must right now in our day and time. I often preach that we are not our parents' generation, nor are we our grandparents' generation. And we are a generation of people who are definitely more educated than what our parents and our grandparents have been educated, and must utilize some of the new training that we have, and also understanding our history, what has caused many of the divide and the strife between African people worldwide. And as we unify together to solve our problems, we've been seeing many nations come to Ethiopia to address the situation. And of course, Africa right now is on the fast track of a economic boom. The African Industrial Revolution is taking place right now, and the unification of our people right now is very important, and especially if the African diaspora now is looking at returning to Mother Africa, especially those individuals who are descendants of enslaved people. We are beginning to look at other alternatives to where we can unite economically and politically to help further moving our people up the ladder. We know that Egypt and many of the imperialist nations have assisted in dividing us as people. And sometimes we don't always know what's going on. We come into the middle of a situation where the full story has not yet been told and on the table. And I think one thing is for sure that we have to have constructive dialogue around our problems so that we can solve these problems as a collective people, a collective group of people.
How can the government of Ethiopia, the legitimate government of Ethiopia, can negotiate with the tourist TPLF because they are waging their own country?
Imperialists, the Europeans, Western society tends to miseducate our people. We have fallen in that trap many times, not just the Ethiopian people, but I'm African American, and the divide also comes with us between racism as well as the misunderstanding and miseducation of the Black man and the Black woman about who it is that we are as a people. And these things can be used to divide us a lot of times. So we want our brothers and sisters to know that we're with you guys in Ethiopia, and if we can assist in any kind of way to help bridge the gap between those brothers and sisters who are fighting against each other, and to come up with some types of solutions that we can help. The most important thing is that sometimes innocent people and children and women get involved, and they're the ones who are affected by it the most. And once we see this, we're able to begin to come up with solutions.
In what ways Africans can show solidarity with Ethiopia and stand by the side of this country in this critical time for this country?
Well, first of all, the African Union itself is a catalyst to making that happen, as well as Ethiopian brothers and sisters who are living in the United States. There have been major protests here in the United States with the Ethiopian community telling the Western powers not to assist in any kind of way on either side, but remain neutral. And as we are uniting our people, the African Union could be a great catalyst for doing this, because I know that they've been sending many presidents from many nations have been coming there to extend the olive branch. Solidarity is very important that we unify these days all across the board. Black people uniting worldwide is very important. And that's some of the things that we often advocate with the New African Network, bridging the gap socially, economically, and politically, so that we'll be able to carve out a future for ourselves. You can't carve out a future with having war in the middle of a economic renaissance. And that's what's taking place right now. So I think the miseducation of our people right now is the catalyst of what's keeping us divided from being unified.
In what ways Africans can stop this continuous pressure and interference of the Western pressure on their domestic affairs?
We love all our Black brothers and sisters all around the world. And if we can't move forward and some of the things that have been oppressing us for many centuries, I don't see a future for Black people at all, no matter where we are. Ethiopia is one of the only nations that had not been conquered by the Europeans. is the only nation that had not been conquered by the Europeans. Certainly, we will not see that happen here in the United States, neither. Our brothers and sisters here in the United States don't want to see any nation conquer any African nations. And we are striving to do our best to put the word out about what the situation is there in Ethiopia. And hopefully the Ethiopian people, the people of the region, East Africa, could join us in unification. A lot of the problems that have been, that we African people experience is because of the lack of job opportunity, the lack of resources that are needed to make us feel that we are important people. These things have kept us from growing for many centuries, and that's because the Europeans and the Asians and the Arabics have had their say-so in the direction of where we need to go as a people, as a united people. And you know, if we were united, Africa would not be in the shape that it's in today. And the Europeans have used this psychological madness on us for many centuries. And like I said, as a new breed leader, African generation, we should understand this in our day and time and be able to maneuver in a way that we can help and better ourselves as a collective group of people in today's time. So my words of advice is that the East Africa itself has to look at who's behind causing the problems. And sometimes it's not just us. I know we as Black people, we have our own issues amongst our race itself, but a lot of it has been because we've been miseducated about many things for a very long time, educationally, politically, and economically. So we must begin to look at new solutions that will help us in this time.
Good. How do you see the interference of Western superpowers into the very domestic affair of Africans? Without any request from the government of Africans, they will interfere into the very domestic affairs of Africans. What is your reflection upon this point?
Well, I feel the United States should stay out of African affairs. African people should be conscious enough to understand that the imperialists have always been there dividing us. But, you know, to solve our own problems is very important as well. Because when you bring outsiders in to solve problems for African people, then what does that say about us as a collective group of people? It makes us look very childish, that we're not mature enough to handle our own problems. And therefore, every time something goes wrong in and around the world, we always look towards the Western powers to come in to intervene. And that is not always good, because with that becomes colonialization. We're right now trying to stop a second wave of both colonialization and economic slavery, which has stifled our people worldwide. If we're able to do that, then that means we take more control of our destiny, our resources, our African lands, as well as what we need as a collective group of people in order to survive in this day and time.
Why the rest of the African countries are keeping silence when the African Union headquarters, Ethiopia, is under the target of Western superpowers?
Well, I'm not understanding why that should be taking place. But the African Union itself is an institution where it is trying to unify. Hopefully we can see many of the borders that the colonializers have put into place for Africa that divided us. You know, at one point in time, all Africans were free to travel throughout the whole continent. But when the Europeans, when the Moors lost the war, the European war, and the European and the Arab invasion came into Africa, it destroyed our unification. And this is something that we must realize through history. This is why we have the conditions that we have today, is because of this. When the Europeans came together during the Berlin Conference, there were no African people at the Berlin Conference. And so with all of that taking place, you know, it came with slavery. It came with nations in Africa being bordered. It came with European and colonization languages that kept us divided, that keeps us divided today. But we, as a more constructive group of people, must learn to utilize some of the things that we've acquired from colonization, colonialization, to help and better ourselves now. It's not always just the barrier of land, but there are many things that could divide people anyway, but we know that Africa is one of the richest, we are the richest nation of people. That's why the Europeans came there. They came there because of the vital resources. The Arabs came there because of the vital resources. The Asians are now there because of the vital resources. And we're the only people, group of people, Black people, who act like we don't know what we have in hand. So this is where our generation come into play. Me and you, we look like we're about the same age, pretty much. And so, like I said, we're not our grandparents. We're not our parents, in which they had their own challenges during their time. But many of the people who are in the political seat these days are of our age group, and we must do better. I look at President Biya as being a very dynamic person. He seems to be very aware and intelligent about what's needed. And of course, we want our brothers and sisters in Ethiopia to do better. We're from the lightest skin color to the darkest skin. And when we say Black people, we mean light skinned and dark skinned people should be unified. We don't want to be divided, because the Europeans and the Arabs and the Asians, they worked very hard over the many centuries to divide us up. And most of that has been divided because we feel that even as a collective group of people, sometimes we feel that we have nothing in common with each other. But in fact, Ethiopia is where civilization, the Black man and the Black woman, first came into existence. And we as a collective group of people, Black people, our Black men and Black women, we birthed the whole earth, including white people. They come from us. And as we understand more about ourselves in this day and time, and especially with the educational resources that we have, we can begin to re-educate ourselves to understand what's truth and what's factual. As we are working together politically and economically, many of the things that have divided and kept Africa from flourishing, we can begin to forge out a new future for ourselves to take us into the 21st century. As we're spending time fighting each other over petty differences, the rest of the world is moving forward with the advancement of technology. As you can see now, most of the European nations and the Asian nations and the Arabic nations, they have developed themselves enough to where they're even forging alliances with each other to move technology into a higher level. Black people ourselves, if we continue to fight amongst ourselves over petty differences, we cannot move into the future. And this is something that we often talk about here in the United States, our Black people here in the United States. What can we do as a collective group of people to help the futurism of Black people? And the only way that we can do that is to re-educate ourselves from some of the things that have divided us for many centuries, some of the things that have kept us from growing in many centuries, and to move forward with that. But our brothers and sisters here in the United States, We understand that sometimes things happen, and we want to see our brothers and sisters in Ethiopia unite with one another so that we can get on with the African Industrial Revolution, which will most likely take care of many of our problems that we've been having for many centuries. The internal turning internally to help each other understand and solve problems is very important.
In a nutshell, what should be the way forward for Africa and Africans in general?
First of all, educating ourselves about what divided us from each other. We can no longer look at the concepts of tribalism that has divided us. No longer look at the concepts of language barriers that have divided us. We must educate ourselves with the tools that are necessary to help us economically. Right now, there are many people who are unemployed, many people who don't have jobs. And of course, you know, when there's nothing to do, our idle mind is the devil's workshop. That is a saying, African proverbs. Our idle mind is the devil's workshop, which means when there's nothing for people to see the future for themselves, then of course you will bring out the evil side of what man has. And that's something that we want to dispose of these days. We definitely don't want to see the same thing happen to Ethiopia, what happened to Syria some years ago. If you see how Syria is now, Syria was a very thriving country, nation. Now it is in ruins, and it may take many centuries to rebuild. And so Africa itself has been on the fast track for the Industrial Revolution. The African Economic and Industrial Revolution is taking place right now. So many of the nations have forged an alliance to do business with one another. And we definitely want to see Ethiopia continue on the right track so they can continue to move into the future.
Mr. Eugene Talford, many thanks for your time.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the time being on your show. Peace and blessings to you and your family.
Dear viewers, we highly appreciate your time. Many thanks for joining us. This will bring us to the end of this edition. I will come on the mobile hosting this program. Till the next edition, have a beautiful time.